The house sighed as Amelia closed the door. A deep, barely audible sound, like an old whisper, dissolved into the silence. She sighed and tossed her bag onto the chair. Samuel was quietly playing in his room, and the evening darkness had already settled outside the window. "Mom, look what I found!" Samuel suddenly ran into the living room, holding an old book with a red cover in his hands. It looked far too old, with worn leather and faded letters that were almost impossible to read. "Where did you get this?" Amelia asked, feeling a sudden chill in her chest. "In the closet. It was just there." The boy stroked the cover and carefully opened the book. The pages were yellowed, their edges burnt, and the text was written in a strange, uneven handwriting. She glanced at the first illustration, a black figure with long arms reaching toward a small child. "If you see him once, he will come again. If you hear his whisper, he will speak to you in dreams. If you feel his presence, he will never leave you again." The words made her heart tighten. "This is nonsense. Where exactly did you find it?" She tried to take the book, but Samuel clutched it tightly to his chest. "It's interesting, Mom. Can I read it?" Amelia hesitated. She didn't know where this book had come from, but for some reason she wanted to destroy it immediately. That night, as she lay in bed, a faint sound of pages turning echoed in the darkness, but there was no one else in the room. That night, Amelia woke to a strange sound, a barely audible rustling, like someone turning the pages of a book. She froze, listening. "Samuel!" She sat up, glancing around. The lamp on the nightstand flickered, and in the darkness she thought she saw something move in the corner of the room. A heavy, dark blotch, shapeless, yet undeniably there. Amelia blinked and the shadow was gone. She shook her head. Exhaustion. Stress. "I've been working too much." Slowly, she got up and carefully opened the door to the hallway. A dim light was spilling out of Samuel's room. "Sam," she called softly. No response. When she stepped inside, her son was sitting on the bed, holding the book. His eyes were wide open, his lips moving as if whispering something under his breath. "Samuel, you're not asleep?" The boy flinched and looked up at her. "He's here, Mom," he whispered. "Who? The one from the book?" Amelia sat beside her son and carefully took the book from his hands. The moment her fingers touched the old paper, a cold shiver ran through her. She glanced at the page open before Samuel. "If you have seen him, it is already too late. He will come through the shadows. He will hide in the corners. He waits for you to fall asleep." Her heart pounded. "Enough," she said firmly, snapping the book shut. "It's just a scary story. Time for bed." Samuel nodded, but his small fingers trembled. She turned off the light, tucked him under the covers, and went back to her room. But sleep did not come. Amelia lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence, and then a new sound. The creak of a door, soft footsteps on the wooden floor. She froze. Her breath turned shallow, her heart hammering against her ribs. Something moved in the darkness of the hallway, a shadow. It was tall, unnaturally thin, its long arms gliding along the walls. Amelia couldn't scream. She simply lay there, paralyzed by terror as the figure stopped at her bedroom door. She wanted to close her eyes. She wanted to wake up. But then she heard the voice, a whisper, right beside her ear. "He is already here." Amelia froze. Her body refused to move, as if the air in the room had grown thick and heavy. The whisper, cold and unfamiliar, dissolved into the darkness. She jolted upright in bed. Nighttime silence. Her bedroom door was slightly ajar. The dark hallway seemed longer than usual. She listened. Samuel. He was crying. Amelia rushed to his room. The boy sat on his bed, hugging himself, staring at one corner of the room. "Sam, what happened?" He didn't answer. His breathing was ragged, his eyes filled with tears. Amelia stepped closer. "Samuel, talk to me." He shivered. His hands clutched the blanket tightly. "He was here." A chill ran down her spine. "Who?" The boy slowly raised his hand and pointed toward the dark corner of the room. Amelia followed his gaze. At first she saw nothing, but then the darkness in the corner was too deep, as if it had a life of its own. And within it, eyes, black as an abyss, bottomless, dead. They were staring right at her. Amelia recoiled, pulling Samuel into her arms and pressing the light switch. The room flooded with brightness. The corner was empty, but something remained, a faint, nearly invisible imprint on the floor, as if someone had been standing there barefoot for too long. Samuel sobbed in her arms. "It's just a dream," Amelia murmured, trying to soothe him. But her voice trembled. She glanced at the floor. The imprint was gone. "It's okay, sweetheart, I'm here," she whispered, tucking him back into bed. "It's just your imagination." But Samuel shook his head. He said he won't leave now. Ice flooded her veins. "What?" He said that now he is inside you, Mom. Her heart stopped. Amelia clenched her fists, willing herself not to tremble. "No, that's not true, Sam. Everything's fine. Sleep now." The boy buried his face in the blanket. But as Amelia left the room, she was no longer sure he was wrong, because as she passed the hallway mirror, her reflection lingered for a moment longer than it should have. Amelia stopped. Her heart pounded so loudly it felt like the whole house could hear it. Slowly, she turned her head back toward the mirror. Her reflection stood there unchanged. But something was wrong. It looked too still. The eyes seemed hollow, the face foreign. Amelia took a step back. Her reflection did not move. A scream caught in her throat. She blinked, and the mirror once again reflected her normal image. The same pajamas, the same disheveled hair, the same exhausted eyes. A shiver ran through her body. "Fatigue," she whispered. "It's just exhaustion." Without thinking further, Amelia turned away and nearly ran to her bedroom. That night, she didn't sleep. Morning came slowly. Pale light barely broke through the heavy clouds. Samuel sat at the kitchen table, stirring his spoon in a bowl of oatmeal. He looked drained. "Sam, you've barely eaten anything," Amelia said, trying to keep her tone calm. The boy lifted his gaze to her. "I'm not hungry." His voice was quiet, distant. Amelia sat down beside him. "Listen, sweetheart." She took his small hand in hers. "I know that book scared you, but you need to understand. It's not real." Samuel held her gaze. "What if it is?" Her fingers instinctively tightened around his. "Sam, enough. It's just a scary story." "But he's here, Mom." Amelia took a deep breath. "It's okay. Today I'll throw that book away, and we'll forget about all of this. All right?" Samuel jerked back, yanking his hand from hers. "No!" His face twisted with fear. "Sam, What is it? He doesn't want you to throw it away. Those words sent ice through her veins. Who? He? The boy didn't answer. Instead, his gaze drifted past her, towards something behind her. A chill crawled up Amelia's spine. Slowly, she turned her head. The mirror on the wall reflected the kitchen, but her reflection was not there. Amelia couldn't tear her eyes away from the mirror, the kitchen table, the chairs, Samuel. Everything was reflected, except for her. Her heart pounded violently against her ribs. Slowly, she raised her hand. Nothing changed. She wasn't there. Mom. Samuel's voice echoed distantly. She turned to him sharply. His lips trembled, fear shining in his wide eyes. He said, "You're already his." Amelia staggered back. "Who is he?" "Sam, you're scaring me." The boy covered his face with his hands, refusing to answer. She sprang to her feet and, without thinking, grabbed the book from the table. "I have to burn it." She rushed to the fireplace in the living room, flung open the grate, and threw the book inside. Grabbing the matches, she struck one. Click! The flames flickered, illuminating the pages for a brief moment. But they didn't burn. The fire only brushed against them, leaving them untouched. Click! Another match. Nothing. The book didn't even singe at the edges. Panic squeezed her throat. Then the pages began to turn by themselves. A chill crawled over her skin. The book stopped on a new page. An illustration, a woman with hollow eyes standing before a mirror. And beneath it, text. "The shadow is inside now. It will become you. You look into the mirror, but the mirror no longer sees you because you are no longer you." Tears welled in her eyes. Amelia ran back to the kitchen, breathless, trembling. The mirror was there, and now she was reflected, but her reflection was wrong. It was smiling, a wide, unnatural grin. She hadn't moved, but her reflection slowly tilted its head to the side. Amelia screamed. Behind her, Samuel stood frozen in terror. She felt cold fingers brush against her neck and a voice, a whisper. "You are already mine." Amelia recoiled from the mirror, slamming her back against the table. "Get out!" she screamed, but the room remained empty. Only her reflection. It didn't move with her. She gasped for air, struggling to tear her eyes away from the horrifying image in the glass. And then the reflection took a step forward. She did not. Cold sweat broke across her skin. The reflection moved closer, pressing up against the glass. And its eyes, they were not hers. They were black, empty. Its lips parted. "Now you are looking from the other side." A scream choked in her throat. Gasping, Amelia grabbed Samuel's hand and yanked him toward the door. "We're leaving, right now." The boy silently obeyed. But as they rushed past the living room, the book, it lay open, a new page, a new illustration, a mother holding her son's hand, and behind her, a black shadow with a faceless void where its face should be. "You cannot run from the shadow. It will follow you." Amelia trembled. Something inside her cracked. "Mom," Samuel whispered. Her fingers gripped his wrist too tightly. He flinched, trying to pull away. "Mom, that hurts." She let go abruptly. "What is happening to me?" Her breath came in ragged gasps. She couldn't focus. A voice whispered inside her head, a voice that wasn't hers. "Don't run. This is your home. He is already here." She felt something cold slithering inside her, something foreign, something vile wrapping around her thoughts. Her lips stretched into a smile she did not control. "There's nowhere to go, Samuel." The boy looked at her in a way he never had before, like she was a monster. Samuel stepped back until his heels pressed against the couch. "Mom." His voice broke into a whisper. But she didn't look like his mom anymore. Her eyes were hollow, her smile predatory. Her fingers twitched uncontrollably, as if she was trying to hold something inside her. "Sem." Her voice wasn't right, low, wrong. He took another step back. You're not my mom." Her body convulsed. For a moment, Amelia's face returned to itself. Fear flashed in her eyes. "Samuel, run!" She gasped, as if fighting something unseen. Her fingers clawed at her own throat, as if caught in a noose. "Run!" Samuel bolted toward the door, the handle. He yanked it down, locked. "No, no, please!" He banged on the door. "Open! Open!" Behind him a sound, a rustling. He turned. Amelia no longer moved like a person. Her body twisted at unnatural angles. Her fingers had stretched. Her limbs jerked like a puppet with broken strings. And her eyes, black, lifeless. Samuel's breath hitched. He knew this wasn't his mother. "I am your mother, Samuel." The whisper dripped like venom from her lips. She stepped toward him. "And now we'll be together forever." Samuel's gaze snapped to the table. The book, it still lay there, open, his small hands clenched into fists. He knew what he had to do. He remembered what the voice in his dreams had told him. He's bound to the book. If the book goes, so does he. Trembling, Samuel lunged forward, grabbed it, and without thinking tore a page in half. A scream, deafening, inhuman. Amelia collapsed onto the floor, writhing in violent spasms. Her hands clawed at her throat, at her skin, as if something was trying to break free. Samuel stumbled back and tore another page. The book trembled in his hands. Black stains, like blood, began to seep through the pages. "No!" The thing that had been his mother shrieked. She couldn't move. She was frozen like a reflection trapped in glass. Samuel tore the final page, and everything exploded into darkness. Silence, deep, suffocating, like the emptiness after a storm. Samuel slowly opened his eyes. The living room looked normal. No shadows, no whispers, only the torn remnants of the book scattered across the floor, and in the air lingered the scent of old paper and something rancid. "Mom?" His voice sounded foreign to him. He turned. Amelia lay in the middle of the room. Her body was motionless. Samuel ran to her and grabbed her hand. "Mom, wake up." She didn't move. Her eyes were closed, her face so pale that for a moment he thought, "No!" He choked on a sob and pressed his ear against her chest, searching for a heartbeat. "Please, Mom, please." And then she inhaled, deep, sharp, as if breaking free from a nightmare. Her eyes opened, normal, her eyes. "Samuel." Her voice was weak, hoarse. She blinked as if she didn't understand where she was. "Mom!" The boy threw his arms around her neck, sobbing. Amelia trembled, clutching him tightly. She didn't remember everything, only fragments, the mirror, the shadow in the corner, the sensation of something crawling beneath her skin. And then darkness. It was just a dream. she whispered, but Samuel shook his head. No, it was him. Amelia looked at the torn book. The pages were black, empty. No words, no drawings, only ash, crumbling from them as if they had burned from the inside out. She exhaled. It's over. Samuel didn't answer. He was staring at the mirror. The reflection was right. Mom was herself. But in the corner of the room, where the darkness was just a little too thick, he saw them. The same eyes. Black, empty, watching, waiting. Mom! His voice wavered to a whisper. Amelia lifted her head. What is it, sweetheart? Samuel lowered his gaze. Nothing. She kissed the top of his head, holding him tighter, and she never noticed how her reflection smiled.